nervous system. Nervous system, the functions of the nervous system is for the sensory function, that is the input, the integration, that is the interpretation, and the motor output, that is the response. So there is sensory, there is integration, there's motor output, which is the response. So properties of the neurons, the properties of the nervous system, the irritability and conductivity, response to various types of stimuli, distributed throughout the body as integrated network, made up of two cell types, nerve cells. The nervous system is made up of two cell types, the nerve cells and the glial cells, which is neuroglia. So here we have the nervous system, the CNS, the central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. So the nervous system is made up of the CNS and the peripheral nervous system. So the neuron is excitable, independent anatomic and functional units with complex morphological characteristics. Neurons have the nerve cells specialized to transmit. So the nerve cells are specialized to transmit messages. Then there are major parts of the neuron. Cell body has the nucleus and metabolic center for the cell, main part of the nerve cell. So the cell body is the main part of the nerve cell. As you can see here, the cell body is the main part of the nerve cell. Then the neurons have the nerve cells, which are specialized to transmit messages, processes, fibers that extend from the cell body. All of these processes are the fibers that extend from the whole body. Cell body can be microscopic or up to 3 to 4 feet in length. Anatomy of the neurons, cell body, nucleus, mitochondria, nucleus substance, neurofibrils. The axon consists myelin sheath, C1 cells, rods of Ranvier. As you can see from this point here, we have the cell body. The cell body is the whole of this one. Then we have the nucleus, this is the inner part. The mitochondria is here, yes, the mitochondria. Then we have the nuclear substances, they are here, nuclear substances. Then there are neurofibrils, they are also inside there. Then there are dendrites here. The projections are the dendrites. Then on the axon is from here, going to this place. So we have the myelin sheath, the Schwann cells. So we have the myelin sheath, this one, the Schwann cells, and the rods of Ranvier. Rods of Ranvier are the spaces between the two C1 cells. So the rod of Ranvier are the two of the they are found between the C1 cells. So types of neurons, they are named according to the branch, according to the branch of the dendrite. So unipolar here, it has one branch, as you can see, unipolar. It has one branch here from the where the nucleus is, the cell body. From the cell body, it has one dendrite from the cell body. So here it is unipolar. Uni means one. Then pyramidal means pyramid. So pyramid has 3 parts. So it has 3 dendrites from one cell body. Then multipolar, it has several. Multi means several. So you can see here is a cell body, and there are several dendrites from the one cell body. Bipolar, bipolar we mean 2. So here there are 2 projections of dendrites from the cell body. Then Purkinje, it means that it has a lot of branches. So as you can see here, it has a lot of branches. That one's for Purkinje. So those are types of neurons, and are named according to the projections from the cell body. So after projection from the cell body, so functional classification of neurons, the sensory, the motor, and interneurons. So you say the sensory triggered by physical and chemical input from the environment. Sound, touch, heat, light are physical inputs. Smell, taste are chemical inputs. So sensory are for the input, for the sensing. Then motor play a major role in movement, including for voluntary and involuntary movement. They allow the brain and the spinal cord to communicate with the muscles, organs, and the ligaments all over the body. So it means here the motor neurons are the ones that respond. Then interneurons are neutral intermediaries found in your brain and spinal cord. They are the most common type of neuron. They pass signals from sensory neuron and other interneurons to the motor neurons and the interneurons. So these interneurons are found, they're found in between the sensory and motor neuron. So their function is to transmit the information. Often they form complex circuits that help to react to external stimuli. So the first one here, we have said they are neurons. So the nerve cells are made up of neurons and glial cells. So neuralgia is the second type of nerve cell. So it is found in the CNS, central nervous system, which consists the brain and the spinal cord. And the PNS is the peripheral nervous system, which is found outside the brain. So supporting cells in the central nervous system. CNS are grouped together as neuralgia. The neuralgia literally means nerve glue. The function of the neuralgia is to support, insulate, and protect the delicate neurons in the brain. So types of neuralgia include the CNS and PNS. So you say CNS is the central nervous system and PNS is the peripheral nervous system. Astrocytes are star-shaped cells. Processes have explained ends to attach to the walls of the blood capillaries, control the chemical environment of the brain, forming blood-brain barrier. Satellite cells surround the nerve cells of ganglia. Flattened cells with prominent nuclei insulate and support neurons of the ganglia. And in the CNS, microglia, spider-like phagocytes, white blood cells, dispose of debris like dead brain cells and bacteria. And Schwann cells from myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system flatten cells with flattened nucleus. Then oligodendrocytes, small round cells with few cytoplasmic processes, produce myelin sheaths. Myelin is a fatty insulation covering the nerve cell, allows the electrical signal to transmit faster. So the nervous system is made up of the central nervous system, the CNS, and the peripheral nervous system. So as you can see here, central nervous system is the body, the head. The central nervous system is the head, and the brain and the spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system is the neurons that are linked to the CNS. So the central nervous system contains the spinal cord, the brain stem, and the brain. So the brain stem, it goes up to inside the brain, and also the brain itself is the part of the central nervous system. And the brain has three parts: the hindbrain, which is the lower part of the back part. Then you have the midbrain, which is found between the hindbrain and the forebrain. Then you have the forebrain, the frontal part. So the peripheral nervous system is further divided into two: the autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. So somatic nervous system carries sensory information from sensory organs to the CNS and relays motor movement commands to the muscles control voluntary movement. Here, the key word is voluntary movement. There's voluntary movement. But in voluntary movement, it is in the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system comes from the word automatic. Automatic means it works by itself. So autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary bodily processes, including the heart rate, respiration, digestion, pupil contraction, operates automatically without conscious direction. So this one, it operates normally and automatically. So sympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for fight or flight. And the parasympathetic system calms the body and helps the body to conserve energy. So as you can see, sympathetic nervous system, it is adrenergic nervous system, and parasympathetic nervous system is for cholinergic. So adrenergic nervous system is for the fight and flight, but for the parasympathetic nervous system is a cholinergic system which calms the body, and the other processes can take place peacefully. So organization, as you can see here, the red part of the body, here, it is the central nervous system. So the central nervous system consists of this part from here. It goes up to the coccyx. So it starts from the brain and to the spinal cord. That is the central nervous system. Then the peripheral nervous system are the ones that are connected to the CNS. So brain and spinal cord, as you can see, the red one. Then efferent division. So there is the left and there is the blue one. So the autonomic nervous system, as you said, they are parasympathetic, sympathetic, and enteric nervous system. So enteric nervous system is for digestive organs only. That's enteric. And the stimuli in the digestive tract, they are stimulated by the digestive tract. So that is for the enteric nervous system. Then the efferent division, somatic nervous system, is the motor neuron, skeletal muscle. So this one, it is controlled by the body. It is voluntary. So voluntary. We are going to discuss about the central nervous system. As I've told you, the nervous system is divided into two. The two are the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. And in that peripheral nervous system, we have they are connected to the trunk. And CNS, which is the central nervous system, consists of the brain and the spinal cord. As you can see here, it is the skull, a human skull. So the brain, the CNS, the brain, is found inside the skull of a human being. So the skull, we have the frontal lobe. I want us to grasp this one because it will help us somewhere. So we have the frontal lobe, the sphenoid bone, then parietal bone, then temporal bone, and occipital bone. So what I want you to understand is this one: sphenoid bone, frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone, and occipital bone. So you can see their positions where they are, so that when we start to name the parts of the brain, you can relate where they are found and where they take place. So here we have regions and organization of the brain. The CNS, the central nervous system, is hollow. It develops from a neutral tube whose cavity persists. Development, the brain consists of the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. As you can see, the forebrain, this one, the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. So the forebrain, as you can see here, this is the frontal part, then this one is the back part of the head. So this one is the occipital part, then this one is the forehead part. So the forebrain is found here, the frontal part, then the midbrain, then the hindbrain. The hindbrain is found between the forebrain and the midbrain is found between the forebrain and the hindbrain. So the hindbrain has the medulla and the cerebellum. So cerebellum is this part, then medulla oblongata is on the other side. The midbrain, it has here, it has the thalamus, hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is posterior, and there are two pituitary glands. So they are controlled by the hypothalamus. This is the middle brain. Then the forebrain include the diencephalon and the telencephalon. So as you can see from this part here, the midbrain and the hindbrain here, they carry the brainstem. As you can see them, carry the brainstem. So the forebrain, as you see, the forebrain consists of cerebellum. Then the midbrain consists of the ventricles, which it has hypothalamus, the thalamus, and the pituitary gland, and the corpus callosum. So the thalamus, hypothalamus, corpus callosum, pituitary gland are found in the midbrain. Then the hindbrain has cerebellum, brainstem, which the brainstem consists of the pons and medulla. So as you can see here, the cerebrum, or cerebrum, its function is for memory, thinking, and analyzing for cognitive. Then for the midbrain, it's mostly the regulation of hormones. Then for hindbrain, is for hindbrain, its function mainly is for regulating the body and the body temperature, breathing, and everything. As in the autonomic nervous system, they usually utilize the hindbrain. So regions, organization of the brain, we are still there. The forebrain is composed of the cerebrum. So the two cerebrum hemisphere, each with a cavity, the lateral ventricle. So the cerebrum has two hemispheres. There are two, they are paired. A deeper central portion, the encephalon, whose main part is the thalamus, and hypothalamus, whose cavity is the third ventricle. Then the midbrain is smaller region whose cavity is aqueduct and whose connects the forebrain with the hindbrain. The hindbrain consists of the pons, medulla oblongata, and cerebellum. So, and whose cavity is the fourth ventricle. Cerebral hemispheres, the encephalon, thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus, brainstem, midbrain, pons, medulla, and cerebrum. So cerebral hemisphere, there, the encephalon, which I said contains the hypothalamus, thalamus, and epithalamus. Then you have the cerebellum. This is found on the hindbrain. Then the brainstem consists of midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. So the forebrain cerebrum is 83% of the total brain mass. Paired, there are two. Surface consists of gyri and sulci. So shallow grooves between gyri, elevated ridges tissue, that is gyri are elevated ridges tissues, and sulci are shallow grooves between gyri. Has brain lobes named after the cranial bone. They are named after the cranial bone that sits over them, one extra called the insula. So you must always know that they are named over their cranial bone. That's why I started showing you a slide from the cranial bone so that you can understand. So as you have said, the surface consists of gyri, which are elevated ridges tissue. So gyri are elevated ridges tissues, and sulci shallow grooves between gyri. So sulci shallow grooves between gyri, and gyri elevated regions. So as you can see here, gyri are the elevated regions here, and sulci are the elevated regions closer to gyri. So we have the fissure, we have the cerebrum, which I said the cerebrum are in two hemispheres, and they make 83% of the total weight of the brain. So there's a encephalon here, which contains the thalamus and hypothalamus. And there's the midbrain. Here, there's the pituitary gland. Then there are pons, medulla oblongata, then the spinal cord, and the cerebellum. So the brainstem consists of the pons, the medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum. So that is the hindbrain. So as you can see here, central nervous system. So when we are naming the neurons, we say that there is cell body and there is the axon. So the axon are always white in color, and the cell body are gray in color. When we are in the spinal cord, the white part is found outside, while the inner part, which is the cell body, is connected to the inner side of the spinal cord. But on the brain, it is the opposite. The gray matter, which contains the cell body, stays outside, while the white matter, which contains the axon. It remains inside. So we have the sulcus and gyrus, as you can see. So this is what I mean. Here it is the opposite of what the spinal cord has. So here the gray matter, here this gray matter, it is outside, then the white matter is inside. It is opposite of the what is in the spinal cord. So the cerebellum, the medulla oblongata, the spinal cord where it is found here, the temporal lobe. So as you can see here, we have the temporal lobe here. We have the spinal cord, this part, then medulla oblongata, this part, then the pons, then the cerebellum, transverse, cerebral, then you have the temporal lobe. This temporal lobe is named after the temporal bone. Then you have the occipital lobe here, which is named after the occipital bone. Then you have parieto-occipital sulcus or medial surface of the hemisphere. Then you have the parietal lobe here, named after the parietal bone. Then you have the central sulcus. It divides the parietal lobe and the frontal lobe. As you can see, it divides the two together. So these lobes are the frontal lobe lie in front of the central sulcus and the lateral sulcus. The parietal lobe lie behind the central sulcus and above the lateral sulcus. Then the temporal lobe lie between the lateral sulcus. So the temporal lobes are always paired. The frontal lobes are always paired. The cerebellum is also paired. Occipital lobe lie behind the parietal occipital sulcus. So there's the frontal lobe, the thinking, memory, then there's behavior and movement. So the frontal lobe controls the thinking, controls the memory, that is cognitive, controls the behavior and movement. Then the parietal lobe controls the language and the touch. Then the occipital lobe controls the vision. Then the cerebellum controls the balance and coordination. When a person is walking, it controls that balance and coordination. Then the temporal lobe is for the hearing, learning, and feeling. So you must get the difference between the temporal lobe and the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is for thinking, remembering, and behavior and movement. But this one is for hearing, learning, and feeling, the temporal lobe. So the brainstem is for the breathing, heart rate, and temperature. This one mostly controls the autonomic nervous system. So internal structure of the brain, the surface of the cerebral cortex is composed of gray matter. As I have really explained, nerve cell bodies, the gray matters are outside, then the white matter is inside. The lobes are now connected by masses of nerve fibers or tracts, which makes up the white matter. So the white matters are made up of nerve fibers and tracts. These fibers belong to three main groups. The fibers in the white matter contain three main groups: commissural fibers, which join two corresponding areas of the two cerebral hemispheres. Commissural fibers. Association fibers connect different parts of the cortex. Then projection fibers connect the cerebral cortex with the nucleus to the lower part of the brainstem and the spinal cord. So as you can see here, commissural fibers. This one, commissural fibers. As you can see, commissural fibers here. This one, commissural fibers. It relays information from one lobe to another. There are two hemispheres. So commissural fibers connect two corresponding areas of the two cerebral hemispheres. It connects the two cerebral hemispheres. It communicates with the two cerebral hemispheres. Then projection fibers connect the cerebral cortex with the nuclei in the lower part of the brain. So this one, projection, is from the upper part of the brain. It communicates with the lower part of the brain. That is the connection fibers. So commissural within two hemispheres, then projection between the hemisphere and the lower part of the brain. Then we have the association, which is accurate fibers or tracts connect the different part of the cortex. So as you can see here, this one is a cortex, this one is a cortex, this one is a cortex, this one is a cortex. So the communication between these cortexes is called association, is caused by association fibers. Then the outer part, this one, which looks the brown part, is the gray matter. So it is that simple. So functions of the cerebral cortex include mental activities involving memory, cognitive, intelligence, sense of responsibility, thinking, reasoning, moral sense, and learning are attributed to higher centries. Sensory perception, including the perception of the pain, temperature, touch, sight, hearing, taste, and smell. Initiation and control of skeletal, voluntary muscle contraction. So motor areas of the cerebral cortex. The primary motor area lie in the frontal lobe. The cell bodies here initiate contraction of skeletal muscles. Motor area of right hemisphere of the cerebrum control voluntary muscle movement on the left side of the body and vice versa. 2. Broca's motor speech are 44, area 44 and 45. They are situated in the frontal lobe on the left side. It controls muscle movement necessary for speech. So as you can see here, the central sulcus is Broca's area. The Broca's area. Let me show you Broca's area here. This is the Broca's area. Then you have the primary motor area. Primary motor area here. Yes. Then there's a working memory for skeletal tasks. Then there's executive area task for movement management. Then auditory here for hearing. Then primary cortex there. Then you have visual association on the occipital. Then you have primary visual cortex here on the pre-occipital. Then these two are for hearing. These two are for vision. This one from the occipital. Then the tests are from the gustatory cortex. There. Then somatosensory association cortex and primary somatosensory cortex. These two are for voluntary muscle action. So somatosensory area, olfactory area, auditory area, gustatory area, and visual area. So we have said this somatosensory, this one is for somatic, which is the voluntary movement. Then olfactory, this one is for smell, auditory for hearing, gustatory for GIT, then visual for seeing. So that is it. Then homeostatic imbalance, like stroke, which is stoppage of blood to the brain. So damages region of the primary motor cortex, body paralyzed. Then damage the premotor cortex, reliable. Then forebrain, the cephalon. Forebrain consists of the thalamus consists of two masses of nerve cells, fibers situated in the cerebral hemisphere. Sensory inputs from the skin, viscera, and special sense organs are relayed on the thalamus before redistribution to the cerebrum. Hypothalamus lies below the thalamus and above the pituitary gland. So there is thalamus, then hypothalamus, then pituitary gland. So it controls the output of hormones from the pituitary gland. So hypothalamus controls the output of the hormone. The sensory part is the thalamus. So the thalamus is the sensory part. Then hypothalamus regulates. Then the pituitary gland now produces the hormone. It controls the output of hormones from the pituitary gland, among other functions. So epithalamus has a pineal gland that secretes melatonin. This melatonin is hormone for which controls sleeping. Hormones which control the sleeping cycle. So as you can see here, we have the thalamus, hypothalamus here. Then after hypothalamus, we have the thalamus. Thalamus is somewhere here. Yes, thalamus. You can see thalamus is here. Then hypothalamus is here. Then you have the pituitary gland is here. So This one is for sensory. Then it sends signal to the hypothalamus, and then hypothalamus regulates the removal of the hormones from the pituitary gland for the action. So that one is for hypothalamus. Then the brainstem produce the autonomic functions necessary for survival, provide pathway for fiber attracts between spinal cord and the hemispheres, contains the nuclei 10 to 12 cranial nerves, 3 parts, midbrain. It consists of 3 parts: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. So the midbrain, it connects the forebrain. So mid, by the word mid, it means middle. So it is the middle between the midbrain and between the forebrain and the hindbrain. So it is the shortest segment of the brainstem, of being not more than 2 centimeters in length. It's very short. Running through the midbrain is the cerebral aqueduct, joining the third and the fourth ventricles. It consists of nuclei and nerve fibers, which connects the cerebrum with the lower parts of the brain and with the spinal cord. So here, as you can see, we have the midbrain here. This one, this is the midbrain. As you can see, that one is the midbrain. The midbrain is here. Yes. Then the thalamus here. That one is the thalamus. Then hypothalamus. Then the pituitary gland. Then you have the pons, medulla oblongata, and brainstem, cerebellum. So you can see how the brain is very easy to understand, that one, and very easy to get how things flow on that side. So you can go to the hindbrain. The pons links cerebellum with the midbrain. So as you can see here, the pons links cerebellum with the midbrain. Found between connects mostly projection fibers containing centers for breathing, 4 groups of structures: ascending, descending, transverse tracts, nuclei controlling respiration, sensory and motor nuclei of cranial nerves, nuclei at tracts that process relay information sent from cerebellum. So this one is the brainstem. It contains the midbrain, the pons, medulla oblongata, and the spinal cord. So the pons connect the midbrain with the medulla oblongata and also with the cerebellum. So the hindbrain, they include the medulla oblongata, most inferior part of the brainstem, has a decussation of pyramids. The nerve fibers descend to the spinal cord. Medulla oblongata contains autonomic center for vital functions, relays stations along sensory and motor pathways, nucleic associated with 5 cranial nerves. So it's associated with 5 cranial nerves. Medulla oblongata centers contain important centers of the autonomic nervous system, which is the respiratory center for breathing, cardiac center for heartbeat, vasomotor center for vessels, blood vessels. Then there's vomiting, then there's swallowing, there's hiccuping, then there's cough, there's sneezing. So the cerebellum is the third part. Cerebellum consists 11%. So we say the cerebrum is 83%. So the other 11 is for the cerebellum. So 83 plus 11, that is 94%. 94% of the total weight of the brain is made up of cerebrum and cerebellum. And cerebrum and cerebellum makes up 94. So which means the other parts of the brain, they make up to 4% of the total body mass, including the brain stem. So you can see how important is the cerebellum and the cerebrum. So located under the cerebral nucleus, posterior to pons and medulla, it is oval in shape and consists of 2 hemispheres. It also has 2 hemispheres. As I have said, the cerebrum has 2 hemispheres, and also the cerebellum has 2 hemispheres. The temporal lobe consists of, they are in pairs. Temporal lobe, they are in pairs. So two hemispheres separated narrow median strip called vermis. Like the cerebrum, the cerebellum is surfaced with cortex of gray matter with the white matter internal. Embedded within the white matter and four parts of nuclei. So that is the structure of the cerebellum. So you can see the anterior, the upper part, then there is primary fissure, then there is posterior lobe, the back part, then there is horizontal fissure, then there is valves. As you can see here, the saccade here. I have cut it and I have tried to show the caudal inferior. So here is the vermis, then this is the deeper cerebellar nuclei. So there is the brainstem here. So this is the upper part, the brainstem, which is the midbrain, and the lower part. So the lateral view of the brainstem is this one. Then the cerebellum, this part, the whole of this part is the cerebellum. As you can see, it contains anterior lobe and the posterior lobe. Anterior means the upper part and the posterior lobe. So regional nuclei, cerebellar cortex, cerebellar nuclei. Then the white matter consists of alveoli vitae. It consists of cerebellar, pedunculus, and superior, middle, and inferior. That one is for pons. So cerebellum is to coordinate smooth muscle contractions. Cerebellar activity is not under voluntary control. It is involuntary. Damage to the cerebellum results in clumsy and coordinated muscle movement. Staggering gait, staggering your stagger, and inability to carry out smooth, steady, precise movement because it is the organ for balance. So within the brain, there are four irregular shaped cavities or ventricles containing cerebrospinal fluid. There are four irregular shaped cavities. So the brain has four irregular shaped cavities: the right and the left lateral ventricles, the third ventricle, and the fourth ventricle here, as you can see. Here are irregular shaped ventricle. So here is the direction of the cerebrospinal fluid. It moves from this part, goes that way, and gets out of the brain. So this one is it is for the cerebral cavities. So I say it contains the four parts, which is the right and left ventricles, third ventricles, fourth ventricles. So homeostatic imbalance, this one is hydrocephalus, water. It is also called water in the brain. The ventricles have too much cerebral fluid, and that fluid is not coming out. So as you can see, this baby, it has a bigger head, and as you can see, the veins are a little bit protruding, and the hair looks like it is bigger than its age. So it means there are a lot of accumulation to the head. So when the water is not getting out of the cavities, it will accumulate to the brain, causing the hydrocephalus. Blood supply to the brain, arterial supply. So blood being supplied to the brain. A brain is also an organ which needs to be supplied with blood. So there are arteries which supply blood to the brain, and there are veins which take blood away from from the from the brain. So there are two paired arteries which are responsible for blood supply to the brain. We start with two paired arteries. So the first one is the vertebral arteries for posterior circulation, posterior for the back circulation. The internal carotid, from the word internal, then carotid arteries for the anterior circulation, anterior for the frontal circulation. So terminal branches of these arteries join to form an anastomic circle called circle of Willis. From this circle, branches arise which supply the majority of the cerebrum. Other parts of the CNS, such as pons, and spinal cord are supplied by smaller branches from the vertebral arteries. So that one, the arteries does not come from the cycle of Willis. So as you can see here, we have cycle of Willis, we have basilar artery, internal carotid arteries. So blood is supplied to the brain through the vertebral arteries, then internal carotid arteries from the anterior circulation. So this one is the internal carotid arteries from the anterior circulation, and the other part which has vertebral arteries. So these two, the internal carotid arteries, they are found on the anterior here of the neck. So as you can see, that is the sac of Willis. This one is the sac of Willis. Then you have the external carotid artery. Then you have the vertebral arteries, which supply blood to the brain. Blood supply, arterial supply. The anterior circulation is responsible for supplying the anterior circulation is responsible for supplying to the anterior part of the brain, which is the cerebrum and the ophthalmic artery. Ophthalmic artery is for visual. The left and right common carotid arteries join to give the internal carotid arteries. Each internal carotid arteries give rise to the following branches. Ophthalmic arteries supply eye orbit. So ophthalmic, it is supply eye orbit. Then the posterior communicating artery forms part of the cycle of Willis. Then the anterior cerebral artery supplies to the cerebrum. So here the anterior cerebral supplies to the cerebrum. Then the posterior, the back, forms part of the cycle of Willis. Then the ophthalmic supplies to the eye orbit. As you can see here, this is the cycle of Willis, this is the cycle of Willis, which I say the posterior, they form the sac of Willis. The anterior, they supply to the ophthalmic, which is the eye to the eye orbit. That is the ophthalmic artery. And then the posterior, the part from sac of Willis. Then the anterior supplies to the cerebrum. So as you can see here, posterior cerebral artery, which forms the sac of Willis. Then as we move on, the middle cerebral artery, then anterior. This one is for the cerebrum. This one is for the cerebrum. Then there is ophthalmic artery to the eye, which is the eye orbit. The internal carotids then continue as the middle cerebral arteries, which supply the cerebral cortex. The posterior circulation is responsible for supplying the occipital lobes. The posterior, by posterior we mean the back. So occipital lobes, cerebrum, and cerebellum, which is for the balance and the brainstem. The right and the left vertebral arteries arise from the subclavian arteries. This subclavian artery is found on the shoulder. So the right and the left vertebral arteries there, the right and the left vertebral arteries, they take blood to these ones, which is called the subclavian veins. So the vertebral arteries give off the following branches: posterior, inferior cerebral artery supplying to the cerebellum. So anterior and posterior meningeus arteries supply to the dura mater. The anterior and posterior spinal arteries supply to the spinal cord along its entire length. The vertebral arteries then converge to form basilar artery at the base of the bones inside the cranial. The basilar artery eventually anastomosis with cycle of Willis. So that is the cerebral arterial cycle, the cycle of Willis. As you have said, this anterior, inferior cerebral artery, it forms the cycle of Willis. Then ophthalmic artery, this one is for the eye. Then anterior cerebral artery, it supplies blood to the cerebrum. So you can see there, blood supply to the venous return. So venous return is the carrying of blood away from the heart, away from the brain. So that's carrying blood away from the brain back to the heart. It means blood coming from the organ, which is the brain, it has some toxins or some collected waste products carrying away from the heart, from the brain to the heart. So cortical veins drain into the nearest available venous sinus and of the venous sinus of the dura mater. There are many venous sinuses, but the main ones are superior sagittal sinus, inferior, this superior is the upper part, then the inferior is in the lower of the superior. We'll see it on the next slide. Then there are straight sinus. They are occipital, as this straight sinus is just straight. Then occipital, this superior sagittal sinus is in the upper part. Then inferior sagittal sinus in the lower part. Then the straight sinus, it converts the two, but it is somehow straight. Then occipital sinus is in the back. Then cavernous sinus is this cavernous sinus. Then the superior petrosal sinus. Then there's inferior petrosal sinus. Then the sigmoid sinus. Then the transverse sinus. As you can see here, there's a straight sinus here. Straight sinus here. Straight sinus. Then the superior sagittal sinus, this one. Then the inferior sagittal sinus just from below the superior. Then there is this straight sinus. As you can see, it is straight. Then there's transverse sinus here. Then the sigmoid sinus. Then there's internal jugular vein. This jugular vein is the one that drains to the superior of the veins of the heart. So that's the internal jugular vein. So the internal jugular vein here, yeah, this is a clear picture. As you can see, superior sagittal sinus here, then inferior sagittal sinus in the lower part of the superior, then the straight here, straight sinus, which is very straight, then this transverse here, or confluence sinus, then occipital sinus, then transverse sinus. So this is like it transports everything from all these other sinuses, from the superior, inferior. So the waste product from the superior will take to that direction, then inferior will take to that direction, straight sinus that direction, confluence sinuses to that direction, then occipital sinus. After that, it is collected to the transverse sinus. So the transverse sinus goes to the sigmoid sinus, which transport the waste to the internal jugular vein. So as you can see, that is it. So the sinus drain into one another, and eventually venous blood ends up in the sigmoid sinus, which continue inferiorly as the internal jugular veins, one on the right and another on the left. The internal jugular veins run downwards and eventually join the subclavian veins behind the clavicle to form the branchiocephalic veins. The right and the left branchiocephalic veins join to form the superior vena cava. So the internal jugular veins runs downwards, internal jugular veins, and eventually joins the subclavian veins, which are found here on the anterior of the shoulder. So behind the clavicle to form the branchocephalic veins. The branchocephalic veins drains directly to the superior vena cava. with the superior vena cava, takes that blood to the heart. As you can see here, the left internal jugular vein, this one, takes blood to this direction. So you can see, let me try to show you where. It takes to this direction, blood from this internal jugular vein. Then after it takes to the internal jugular vein, there is this left subclavian vein. So don't confuse them between, if it is from left internal jugular vein, it goes to the left common carotid, it goes to the left subclavian vein. So the subclavian vein takes to the left brachiocephalic vein. So from the brachiocephalic vein, it takes to the superior vena cava. When it is right internal jugular vein. It takes to the right subclavian vein. Then from the right subclavian vein, it goes to the right brachiocephalic vein. Then from the brachiocephalic to the superior vena cava. So protection of the brain. So the brain must be protected, and there are three parts that protect the brain, which is the bones, the meninges, and the cerebrospinal fluid inside ventricles. So that cerebrospinal fluid are found the ventricles in the cavity. So the bone is the hard part of the outside part, which consists of it's the cranium, the skull, which consists the parietal, the frontal, the occipital, and the temporal. The names are named according to the parts of the brain, as I showed you earlier. So that is the frontal part, the parietal bone, the temporal bone, and the occipital bone. We don't have to rely much on the bones. I've really explained it. So we have to go to the meninges. So in the meninges, it covers and protects the central nervous system. So it means it protects the heart, the brain, and the spinal cord. So these meninges run all around from the brain to the spinal cord to the coccyx of the spinal cord. So it covers and protects the CNS, central nervous system. It protects blood vessels. So this one protects the blood vessels from getting into the CNS. Remember, when blood vessels get into the CNS, the person might die. Contain cerebrospinal fluid, form partition in the skull. So layers of meninges. Meninges has three layers, which is the dura mater, the outside, the arachnoid mater, the inside, and then the pia mater. So the arachnoid is in the middle, then the pia mater, it is the inside part of it. So as you can see here, this one is a layer of how it is. So there is a skin of the scalp there, then the peristernum of the bone, then this bone of the skull here, that is the bone. Then after the bone, as you can see, this is the bone of the skull, this part. Then there's peristyle, then there's meningeal. So peristyle and the meningeal are the dura mater. Then there's arachnoid mater, then they are pure matter. So these three from here up to here, they form the meninges. Then there's arachnoid villus, those are the other parts. So the cerebrospinal fluid is found around the brain and the cord. The liquid cushion reduces brain weight, protection from trauma, provides some nutrition. So cerebrospinal fluid provides some nutrition formed by choroid plexus in roof of each ventricle. And then the spinal cord, gray and white matter reversed compared to the hemispheres. Gray is in the inside and the white is in the outside. As you said, for the brain, the gray matter is on the outside, then the white matter is on the inside. That's when we name the commissural, we name the transverse, we name the sagittal traits, which transport information in terms of fibers to the brain. So here, the spinal cord, the gray matter is inside, which contains the cell body, and the white matter which contains the axon, is on the outside. So it is enclosed in the vertebral column. So the vertebral column is 18 inches long. It is 3¼ inch thick. So the meninges, same as the brain, except no periosteal layer on the outside of the dura. So the difference between the meninges, it has the dura mater, it has the dura mater, it has the arachnoid and pia mater, but it does not have the periosteum in the dura mater. So the dura mater, it only has the meningeal. So it lacks the periosteum for the spinal cord. So if you ask a question to differentiate between the spinal cord and the CNS, you'll say the first thing is the gray matter. The gray matter in the brain, it is the outside, and the white matter is inside. Whereas the spinal cord, the gray matter is inside and the white matter is outside. The second thing, both of them have meninges, but the spinal cord lack the periosteal meninge on the dura mater, while the CNS has the periosteal layer on the dura mater of the meninges. So those two differences must be related so precisely. So the cerebrospinal fluid fills the space between the pia and the arachnoid meninges. So between the pia, we say they are pia, arachnoid, and dura. So it lies between arachnoid and pia. So the space here is full of spinal tap or lumbar puncture. As you can see here, we have the epidural space contains part, subdural space, then subscaleral space, then the pia mater, arachnoid dura mater. These are the spinal meninges run from here to here, bone of the vertebra, dorsal root of the ganglion, then the body of the vertebra, this one here, body of the vertebra. We have this one here, the gray matter, then the outside matter is the white matter. White matter contains myelinated and unmyelinated nerve fibers, communication between different parts of the cord of the brain. So that's all about the CNS. So we are going to the peripheral nervous system. So organization of the nervous system, as you said, the CNS, peripheral nervous system, motor neuron, and the sensory neuron, and the motor neuron, the autonomic motor neuron, and the somatic nervous system. So peripheral nervous system consists 12 pairs of the cranial nerves. Cranial nerves are the one that controls the upper part of your head, the head. This one controls the head. Then 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. It controls the other part of the body. So cranial nerves, they're always named in Romans, and some people cram them, but I have mnemonic for it. So here we have the olfactory, this one olfactory here. As you can see, this one is the frontal part. This one is the frontal part of the brain. Here it is the frontal part. Then this one is at the back. As you can see, this is the cerebellum. Then this one is the pons are here, and medulla oblongata, this on the brain stem. As you can see, there is olfactory, there is optic, there is occumulator, there is trochlear, there is trigeminal abducens here, and the facial expression is nerve number 7. Then nerve number 8 is vestibulocochlear here. Then glossopharyngeal, it is this one. Then the vagus there. Then the accessory. Then hypoglossal. So as we move on, you can see the cranial nerve 1 is the olfactory. Then cranial nerve 2 is the optic. Then cranial nerve 4 is the occumulator. Then cranial nerve 5 is the trigeminal. Then cranial nerve 6 is the abducens. Then cranial nerve 7 is for the facial. Then cranial nerve 8 is for vestibular. Then cranial nerve 9 is for the glossopharyngeal. Cranial nerve 10 is for the vagus. Vagus, this controls the heart. Nerve 10. Cranial nerve 11, accessories. Cranial nerve 12, hypoglossal. So that is the formula of the cranial nerves. And there is olfactory optic, and there are numbers there. On occasion, our trust track acts funny, very good vehicle, anyhow. So that is a mnemonic. This one is a mnemonic. You can cram it. Then this one is the cranial nerves for the facial. Yeah, for the facial. So spinal nerves, they are 31 pairs and they are arranged together. So as you can see here, there are 8 cervical. Cervical means they are the neck. There are 12 thoracic. Thoracic means the that at the, let me say, the ribs, at the ribs, then 5 lumbar below the ribs, then the sacral and the coccygeal. As you can see here, the spinal nerves you can see here, the cervical, they are here and they are 8. There are thoracic nerves here, they are 12. There are lumbar nerves here, 5. There are sacral nerves, which are 5 also. Coccygeal nerves here, which I see it is 2. So there's a pair of coccygeal nerves. So thank you guys for listening to me. At least if you have a question, please you can reach me through the comments from, you can ask me the question from the comments. Yeah, thank you.